What's poppin', everybody? Welcome in. It's Professor Kiwoom from South Harmon, and today we are talking about the 5 most important buys in fantasy football. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Yeah, the first buy in fantasy football that you must target right now, and I mean right now, is the Pittsburgh Steelers running back Najee Harris. My man Najee Harris, first and foremost, is dominating the Steelers running back opportunities, and I'm talking about rush attempts and targets. He has 64 3 games in to Jaylen Warren's 19. Warren, when you pull back the curtain, look under the hood, you'll realize this. Usually Jaylen Warren's been the more efficient guy. Jaylen Warren has just not posted the same efficiency numbers that would suggest he's been a better back. When you pop the hood and look at some of the advanced analytics, you'll notice that Najee Harris is running the ball as effectively as Jaylen Warren. So it's not a matter of give Warren more touches, he'll do more with it. No. Najee is playing as good as his teammate 3 games in. Najee Harris has posted 1.3 rushes per game of 15 or more miles per hour. That metric is up from 2023. Najee Harris's 4.3 expected yards per carry would be a career best for the tailback. And when we're talking about the next 3 contests for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they get the Colts, they get the Cowboys, and they get the Raiders. The Colts have given up the most rushing yards overall this season. The Cowboys, after getting demolished by Derrick Henry, have given up the most rushing touchdowns so far this season. And the Raiders, who just gave up over 100 yards to Chuba Hubbard, has actually given up the 3rd most rushing yards so far this season. And for fantasy purposes, what does it mean? Well, Dallas and Vegas give up the most and the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. Folks, now is the time to buy the big running back. Get that boy Najee Harris on the squad today. The second most important buy in fantasy football that you need to be targeting ASAP is Amari Cooper from the Cleveland Browns. So far this season, Amari Cooper has seen nearly 10 targets per game. And when you take his 15.3 average games played per season, multiply it, he's on pace for 145 targets, which, if my data is correct, which it is, that would be an absolute career best for a potential Hall of Fame quality wide receiver. You can slice it, dice it, prep it however you want, but the fact of the matter is Amari Cooper is the wide receiver 1 for Deshaun Watson in the Cleveland Browns. Cooper is coming off of his best game in 2024, where he saw 12 targets, caught 7 of them for 86 yards and 2 tutties. Now let's take a look under the hood. Let's look at some of the advanced analytics and let's see if they suggest he's playing as good as he has throughout his career. Well, when you look at metrics like air yards per target and average separation per target, those numbers are in line with his career best seasons, according to NFL Pro. The Browns have some favorable matchups on their upcoming schedule for wide receivers. They play the Raiders, who just gave up a career day to Deontay Johnson. Then they face the Washington Commanders, who give up the most receiving touchdowns in the NFL. And then after that, they play the Philadelphia Eagles, who give up the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. We're expecting that 40% catch rate to get back up to the career level around 60% over those 3 contests. You can expect Amari Cooper to absolutely smash, and that's why you gotta buy the vet before it's too late. The next buy that you must be targeting in fantasy football is the wide receiver from the Green Bay Packers, Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed has quietly been having a superb 2024 season. He leads the Packers in targets, in receptions, and receiving yards. He's getting incredible separation. He's seen an improvement to his yards per route run and other advanced metrics. And when Jordan Love is back to throwing the football, the Packers will be throwing the ball a hell of a lot more, and we should be seeing a ton of fantasy production going to Jayden Reed. Let's go ahead and take a little peek at the upcoming schedule for the Packers and who they they will be facing off against. This week, they get the Vikings, who give up the second most receiving yards to opposing wide receivers so far in 2024. Then they take on the Rams, who have given up the fourth most receiving yards to receivers and also 6 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers. And then they play the Cardinals, who have one of the worst secondaries in the league. Jordan Love's coming back. The schedule is soft for wide receivers. That is why Jayden Reed is a must-buy in fantasy football right now. The next must-buy in fantasy football is the wide receiver from the Denver Broncos. Sorry, I might have stirred up my mouth a little bit, but I'll get through this. Courtland Sutton from the Denver Broncos, wide receiver. I know it's gross, but my man is seeing a ton of targets so far this season. Over the course of the first 3 games this year, Courtland Sutton has seen 12, 4, and 11 targets. Bo Nix is looking Courtland Sutton's way so much this year, you can't pass it up. You cannot discount that type of volume in fantasy football. Courtland Sutton and the Denver Broncos are actually coming off of their best offensive game so far this year. They beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and more importantly, looking at Courtland Sutton's numbers, like I mentioned, the 11 targets, you'd love to see that. He caught 7 of them for 68 yards, his most productive game this season. Let's take a look at Courtland Sutton's analytical profile, because 2 metrics stick out to me in a very positive way for his rest of season outlook. One being his target rate. It's at 26.5% right now, which is volume we are just simply always going to be chasing, especially in our PPR formats. The other is his deep target rate. We've seen that number come down about 10% from last year to 11.1%, meaning we're getting more conversion when it comes to Courtland Sutton catching balls. It's like taking more layups as opposed to chucking it from the logo. We want these conversions. If we're going to get high volume, 26.5% target rate, we want those to be converted to catches. Give us those points in fantasy football. We love to see that type of production, that type of work from a guy like Courtland Sutton. Looking at the upcoming schedule for the Denver Broncos, this week might suck. The Broncos travel to the East Coast to play on the Jets. We don't love that, but after that, it softens up quite a bit. 3 of his next 4 games will be played at Mile High. You can't discount how good it is to get that home cooking. And a couple of those matchups will come against softer NFC South opponents. Sure, you can wait a week, hope that he stinks against the Jets, and get an even more discounted price, but why risk it? Get Courtland Sutton now, and even if you want to bench him this week, that's fine, but you're going to want him in your lineups for the next month. So make sure you're out there throwing offers all over your leagues. Get Courtland Sutton, people. The last must-buy in fantasy football in today's lesson is TJ Hockenson, tight end from the Minnesota Vikings. Some folks out there are just not okay. They're just not on board with trading for a player who is currently injured, but I have a handful of reasons why TJ Hockenson might be the exception to that rule. First, his head coach, Kevin O'Connell, has been salivating to get him back on the field, and reports continuously surface that he and the Vikings organization is very pleased with the progress that TJ Hockenson has made with that knee injury. The second reason, Jordan Addison has been hurt and hasn't really established himself as the number 2 pass catcher, meaning once TJ Hockenson gets on the field, he'll have a pretty clear path to be number 2 behind Justin Jefferson in the passing hierarchy. And number 3, Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has proven to be more than competent as an NFL quarterback with Kevin O'Connell as his head coach. He's getting the ball to his receivers. He's allowing Justin Jefferson to be fantasy relevant. Hell, he's allowed Jalen Naylor to be fantasy relevant. So once TJ Hockenson is back on the field, and I don't care if you have to wait till week 7, the tight end position has been a complete cesspool so far this year. So why not add a guy like Hockenson? Wait a few weeks. That's okay if you have an IR spot, even better. And when he comes back, you now have a player that will make an absolute difference to you winning fantasy matchups. I mean, let's look at the tight end landscape. Dallas Goedert, Brock Bowers, Cole Kmet, Isaiah Likely, and George Kittle round up the top 5. Likely hasn't done squat since week 1. Kittle has already missed some games, and let's face it, a lot of those Dallas Goedert production, a lot of that Cole Kmet production has come on fantasy squads' benches. So get TJ Hockenson now. Let him marinate on the squad. It's okay. Put him aside. Let him cook. Let him marinate. And when he comes back, you will have a destroyer at tight end who has a great offensive head coach and a very competent NFL type of quarterback with Sam Darnold. So buy TJ Hockenson, baby. 5 buys that you have to be targeting right now in fantasy football: Najee Harris, Amari Cooper, Jayden Reed, Courtland Sutton, and TJ Hockenson. Get them on your team now. And in the meantime, drop a like, leave a comment, make sure you're subscribed to South Harmon Fantasy Football on YouTube right now, and get ready for another lesson next week. Students, you're dismissed.